Yep. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Agile Talks Wired, which is an online meetup of Agile Turkey community. We are very, very happy to host Paul Ellary in our the very first online meetup. Thank you, Paul, for coming and for accepting our meetup.
Oh, it's my pleasure and my honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. For the ones who doesn't know about Agile Turkey, oh, sorry. Oops. One second, I guess. Okay. Thank you, Paul, for coming and for accepting our
Oh, it's my pleasure and my honor.
For the ones who doesn't know about Agile Turkey, I hear my own voice, so sorry about the delay. Sorry about it. Okay. So for the ones who doesn't know about Agile Turkey community, I would like to give some details about the whole community and what we do. First of all, Agile Turkey is a non-profit organization founded on 2008 with the purpose of increasing the adoption of agile methods that have been proven effective around the world in Turkey. So Agile Turkey is the agile coach of Turkey. In fact, that's the thing that we really love to do. Agile Turkey has been organizing free events since 2008, such as Agile Talks seminars and Agile Talks Wired, which is this event, and online and offline Agile meetups and code retreats. We hosted tens of speakers from different backgrounds and experiences, thousands of participants involved in our discussions and in our seminars, and we spent hundreds of hours of knowledge sharing and collaboration. For example, we have been organizing Global Day of Code Retreat in Istanbul for 2 years, and this year we will organize it again. We love to organize the biggest Agile event of the year in Turkey and the region, that is Agile Turkey Summit, and it will be on 9th of October this year on Friday. Agile Turkey is preparing to bring Agile leaders and practitioners from leading companies around the world together in Istanbul. So if you're interested, we'd love to see you in the event. So our guest is Paul. So we are very, very happy to see you. The Agile Turkey community knows you very well from the meetups in Istanbul, and we loved the meetup and the topics you discussed. We learned a lot, and I'm sure people from the outside who watches this live broadcast will enjoy too. So I would like to introduce a little bit, and we can start the chat. So Paul is an expert in Agile and Lean development methods and their effects on organizational structures, and he is the writer of the Agile Executive Primer book, which we read and we loved it. Paul, for the ones who doesn't you well or who wants details from you, could you please introduce you a little bit more?
Of course, I'd be happy to. First of all, let me apologize for delaying this event by an hour. I'm afraid the building I'm in was the victim of a bomb plot, or somebody called in a bomb threat to the building, so we had to evacuate the building for an hour. So I apologize for making you all so late in your evening. It's 2 o'clock in my afternoon now, so I think I come out on the right end of that. Yes, I did have the pleasure of meeting a lot of you at the meetup earlier this year in Istanbul, which is a wonderful thing for me. I love meeting people like you who are so enthusiastic and keen and ask fantastic questions. A lot of the questions you asked me challenged me a lot, which I like tremendously. I've been in this agile space since the late 1990s. I was running a piece of business for a large systems integrator around the Pacific Rim, with a lot of developers doing projects in a fairly standard way. And I was introduced to some Scrum techniques, which I started using and my team started using, realizing the effect of those very quickly. So to give you some scale, I had about 1,000 people in my organization, hundreds of clients, lots of projects, and Scrum at that level. I'm not sure it had been done before, but forming teams and just communicating well made a real believer out of me, and I've been in the Agile space ever since. So I've done it from a project delivery viewpoint. I've run teams, I've run projects, and for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been consulting small organizations, but typically large organizations, to help them adopt Agile as well. Seen a lot of good things happen and a lot of poor things happen in those organizations, some of which I'd like to share with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. We have, Paul, we have tons of questions to you. The topics that we really love to talk is about the role of managers and executives in agile transformation, and how we can attract them, how we can get their interest on the agile transformation. Especially in Turkey, having lack of interest from the management level and executive level is very common. And throughout the journey of agile transformation, from time to time, we are suffering. We have lots of troubles to get support from management. So, what do you think about this? Why? What is the reason of the behavior of this behavior of management level, and what should be the correct mindset of executives?
And I think there are two elements to this question, and one is trying to get leaders and managers to do something new. Too often, and I think we all do this to an extent, but often when we're faced with a difficult problem or some issues or something that's not going well, we try to impose more control over it, right? More, if you would only listen to me and do it my way, it would be great, it would be fine, which is exactly an agile anti-pattern, of course. Certainly in this country, and I'm sure managers tend to take control each years. If you look at project managers, we've rewarded them for really taking control and driving people to achieve results, even though we know deep down that driving people doesn't achieve the results we want. But it's become institutionalized. We even have things like the Project Management Institute that teaches people how to do this. We have MBA classes coming out of the top schools in the West teaching people how to take control. So I think there's a whole cultural element of control that we need to get over. And there has to be a compelling reason for that. In the Agile community, I think we've been very poor or very lax at explaining what that reason is and why people need to change. Jeff Sutherland earlier this year published another book on Scrum, which captured this perfectly. Scrum, the art of doing twice the work in half the time. I happened to be working with Jeff a while ago at a large client here in the US, and when we talked to the CIO, he said he's talked to consulting companies before, and Scrum makes you feel good, and you get a little better, and you deliver things quickly. And Jeff said, yeah, that's all true, but what if I can increase your throughput by 400%? Would that be good? The CIO, Jeff had him right there, because that's real money. That is absolutely real money. And so now when I talk to organizations about, well, why should we do Scrum? Why should we become Agile? I talk in terms of, I can increase your throughput by at least 100%. And any organization that can increase their throughput by 100% is a good thing. Maybe 200%, maybe more. And in Agile, we can honestly bring that to bear. So it boils down to money these days for me. I can save you a lot of money. I can save you almost your entire IT budget. And that's a very attractive thing. I haven't seen an executive yet who says, I'm not interested in that, tell me something else. They're all interested in that, of course. So I think the sooner we can adopt Jeff's language and understand just how it saves money, we should do that. That definitely gets executives' attention, no doubt about it.
I see. Thank you. Okay. So, in different cultures have different styles of management level, of course, and even if we get interest of managers and we attract the executives, their management styles are different, and that might be the cause of failing in agile transformation that is taught by many people. So, which management styles do you think can support agile transformation better? And if we don't have such managers, what should we do?
The old manager problem. Managers need to understand that taking control, as I said earlier, is not really motivational, right? And different cultures operate in different terms of control. Even here in the U.S., if you go to New York or anywhere on the East Coast, managers there have been taught to take control and really control everything: the budget, the people, the teams, the way that we get work done. As you move to the West Coast, that becomes less and less true. Although even on the West Coast, people are very guided by taking control. An example I like to use is when we talk about requirements, when we talk about building the right thing, it's the business's prerogative to tell us what they need. What is the business problem you're trying to solve? And the business problem, for an example, is I'm trying to cross this river, right? I need to get to the other side of the river. Don't give me the solution, just tell me what you need. It's up to us as IT professionals to take that requirement, that business need, and say, oh, we need to build a bridge. Ah, got it. And we can build a bridge this way. We have the right people or we don't. Unfortunately, what we've tended to do in the IT community, and this goes way back, even longer back than when I started writing code, what we've tended to do is have the business community tell us what to accomplish what they want. For the control, rather than saying, no, we are in fact the technical experts. We can build what you need, and we can build it better than anybody else, and we can certainly build it better than you can, because you have a business to run. Let us build this technology. So from a cultural viewpoint, we've kind of done it to ourselves in IT in many ways, which is a shame. And so we're having to fight that cultural battle, not only in the Agile world, but in any IT organization. But it certainly comes to the fore in Agile organizations and Agile transformations. And so I see that struggle with in almost every organization I go into. Actually, the IT organization, even at the CIO level, are not brave enough. Oh, this is going to sound terrible, but they're not brave enough typically to tell the business, just step back, tell us what you want, and then we'll take care of the rest. That's a really big cultural thing to overcome for managers and executives.
I see. So, in a company, especially in IT departments or development teams, people really that we are trying to improve ourselves in means of technologies, how we can build better, products.
Mm-hmm.
And we are getting support from Scrum Masters, from product owners, and from our teammates. However, most of the time, the impediments, the biggest impediments are, these impediments can be solved only by management level. And since management level, they are not very interested in giving support to the team, or they feel that they cannot resolve these cultural impediments, we cannot go further. We cannot build better products. So what should these managers do to resolve cultural impediments, and how they can resolve these big issues that we cannot resolve? So that's another mindset. What is that?
So when I go into an organization and start them along this path of adopting Agile, one of the things that we insist on is taking the executive through typically 2 days of workshops, where we look at the culture of the organization, the structure of the organization, and more importantly, how these executives work. Because unless the executives understand what it means to be agile and start exhibiting some of the behaviors of becoming agile, then it will never trickle down. So I've seen typically 2 patterns that fail in agile adoptions. Either we start at the bottom with the engineering teams and adopt agile in a stealth manner by only the engineering teams adopting it and nobody else, or there's a dictate from the executive suite saying you will become agile, but again that's still down at the engineering level where nobody else in the organization is exhibiting those agile traits, those agile behaviors. So when we step into an organization, say we spend a couple of days, the first day is really educating the executive team on what this agile thing is, because most people don't know what it is, and I think it's important to determine that understanding, and indeed even the language we use. And so we take them through some exercises around empowerment. What does it mean to empower people? In my opinion, what it really means is not saying you just go and do everything, but I'm going to trust you to get the work done. I'm also going to hold you accountable to get the work done. So empowerment has 2 elements there. Trust that you will do it, but show me as well. I'm going to really make sure that you're accountable for getting that work done. So empowerment is an important one. Exhibiting collaborative behavior in organizations, and also at the executive level especially, we tend to look inward. If I look at IT organizations, they tend to look inward at how their own organization is doing. One thing that I like executives to do, one among many things, is look outward from their organization. What is the business trying to do, and what is the business problems they're trying to solve? The CIO and the direct reports to the CIO should be spending half of their time, I think, in the business, not looking inward to the IT organization. So typically we're looking in at how is our organization doing, how we're running, how effective are we, or how efficient are we, as opposed to collaborating with our peers, and they really are peers, to get this business even better, and we have to bring the technology to that. And then there's some other things. Transparency is an important trait too for executives to exhibit. We all know that we all make mistakes all the time. We just do. But how many executives do you know who are open about it and say, I messed up, you're right, I'll learn from it and I'll make sure I don't mess up that way again? That's healthy, right? But if I hide it, or I don't deliver bad news, or an example here is when we don't deliver software, when we don't deliver a project on time or it's over budget, typically we delay reporting that to the client as late as possible. The successful executives, in my opinion, are the ones that say, as soon as possible, there's a chance we're going to be late. Let us figure this out. Let us work together to make sure that doesn't happen. So that transparency is really, really important. But unless you take the executives through some of these exercises and change their mindset, let them understand what's important in an agile world, in an agile project, the adoption is almost doomed to failure from the get-go. So it has to be a multi-level effort.
Uh,
Okay?
okay. Yeah. So, companies may vary in many different ways. They might have uh, tons of employees. Some of the companies might be too small, like few people working on a on an important small project, but the number of employees could be very limited.
Hmm.
And the executives in those companies might have different dynamics. So which one is easier in means of agile adoption? Do you think that managers in big companies or executives in big companies who have lots of sub-executives or managers, uh, or the small companies that can have a limited number of employees, which one is easier, and how can we adopt agile in both types of companies?
The smaller organization, and I don't necessarily mean the smaller company, but the smaller organization generally is an easier place to adopt Agile because of the number of people you can talk to in a day. Small companies with 100 people, if I'm an executive at that company, I can talk to all of those people in a week, right, to understand what's going on, what's happening with them. I can know their names. I believe there's a piece of information somewhere, I can't quite get it back from my mind, that if you know 100 people, you can know all of their names. If you have an organization of 130 people, you're not going to know all the names. So there's a magic number there of around 100. If I'm in a large company with 200,000 employees, obviously I'm never going to get to know everybody. I'm never going to get to meet everybody. It's physically impossible. But if there are small organizations within that 200,000 person company, then I can successfully adopt Agile. I can easily adopt Agile in that smaller organization. The big companies I've been into that really get it, that really adopt Agile well, take that mindset that the executives carve out small organizations and make small, tight-knit organizations rather than big, monolithic organizations. Smaller organizations generally are easier to change. So whether it's a small company or a big company, I don't think makes much difference. But the small organization is definitely easier. Having
In,
said that, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
in big companies, so executives, uh, we know that executives work with lots of different hierarchical levels of managers. So we hear that firing middle managers can resolve many of the issues, many of the impediments. So we hear lots of examples around the world. Do you think that that can work? Or how can we transform a more hierarchical organization into an agile organization?
Um, I'm not a fan of firing people. I think we can employ them in different ways, but that's a very that's my own personal value. Certainly, flattening the organization helps a lot, but only if you make the organization small enough. It's like being on an agile team. An agile team of 8 or 10 people feels right. That's about the right size. An agile team of 50 people is too big, too bulky, can't manage it, it's not effective because of all of the barriers to communication. It's the same with organizations. And I think we've seen this firing of middle managers being an easy and dramatic way to make the organization smaller. Is it the right thing to do? I'm not sure. Maybe it is in some cases, maybe not in others. But carving out smaller organizations, even within a large organization, and making sure they understand their responsibilities is definitely an effective thing to do. Again, big companies I've been into that have done this, they haven't fired middle managers or even senior managers. They've had them go off, become empowered to set up their own organizations, their own little organizations within the bigger organizational context, and run those teams very effectively. That also, though, means they had better be collaborating across their organization a lot more than they've ever done before. So those definitely go hand in hand. So I'm not a big fan of firing middle managers, but I am a fan of making them more effective. Definitely a fan of that. And splitting your organization into these smaller teams. Spotify, for example, Spotify call them tribes now. They're not even teams anymore, which I think is a wonderful description. It's a self-contained unit responsible for a piece of the business. And I think that's a really good way of looking at this. That probably executives haven't looked at traditionally.
We talked about high level managers or executives. Also, we have lots of or what we can say team managers, or from hierarchical point of view, the low level managers. So functional managers. So from time to time, what we hear that if a Scrum team if a team can work together effectively, and if they really learned how to organize themselves, so to achieve self-organization, and if they are empowered enough, teams start to feel that they don't really need functional managers at all. Do you agree with that? Do we need managers? From teams' perspective.
I believe we do. I strongly believe we do. Teams are formed to go and solve a problem, write a piece of software, solve a business problem, whatever it is, software development in our case. And they need to be empowered. They need to be self-directed. They need to be effective. But how do they achieve mastery? If the team is really focused on delivering this piece of software, who's looking out for increasing their skills, making them T-shaped people, increasing their pay, giving them the training they need? It's very hard for a team to do that on its own because they're so focused on solving the problem. So managers have to become it's an old phrase, but servant leaders. They need to be able to look after their teams. And so I'm actually a fan of managers looking after disciplines. So all of the Java developers might report to one manager who happens to know Java development really well and the marketplace and how to find new people and what training is happening and what conferences are important to go to, what the market rate is for Java developers now, so that that manager can look after that community of developers, so that they can focus on the work that has to be delivered. So a team really focuses on what to be delivered. A manager should focus on how can I make my people the best possible people to go and deliver that work. And that manager should be looking across teams. It wouldn't just be one functional team or one delivery team. They might look after people in 3 or 4 or 5 teams. More of a community manager, if you will, than a functional manager. So it's a whole different view of management.
I see. From time to time, we experience lots of interesting behaviors from managers or from executives that have impact on the motivation of the teams. So motivation from teams' perspective is very important, because if you don't have any motivation, you really cannot build good products, or you cannot work effectively. From motivation perspective, the motivation of employees, what are the tricks, or what are your advices for managers and for executives?
Obviously, there's a lot of things around pay and conditions and all of those very basic things that people should be providing. But assuming those are met, I'm paid well, I'm in a clean environment, I like the people I work with, that's one thing that managers should be looking after. But there are some other things too that we can take directly from Agile that really affect the way we work as individuals. Maybe the most important one for me is limiting the amount of work that I have going on. Meaning, don't put me on 4 or 5 or 6 projects and hope I can deliver them all well, because I cannot. It's impossible. Give me one project, and maybe I'll help out on another project a little bit, but let's focus on one thing. What is the most important thing in the company that has to get done? I can go and do that. I understand that, and I can make myself an expert in that space. I'm really finding the more that I do this, how demotivational it is working on 3 or 4 or 5 projects, because I'm never sure which one is the most important, and I've always got 2 or 3 people who are unhappy with me because I'm not working on their project, and yet my manager's telling me to do all 3 or 4 or 5 things. So I think changing that aspect alone can go a long way to motivating people. Giving me responsibility for delivering things my way. If you tell me we're going to cross the river, and I design a bridge, don't then come and tell me how to build it, right? I designed it, I got it, I can build it. Trust me that I can do that. So that trust in individuals is huge. It's just huge. Take that trust away, now you've taken all my motivation away again. But give me responsibility too. I have to be responsible and self-responsible for getting the work done that I have promised. That it might sound counterintuitive, but that responsibility goes a long way to motivating people. I'm responsible and I did this. Look at me, I did this. It's great. And that's why we deliver frequently and do showcases frequently, so that I can celebrate the work I've just delivered. So there are 2 things there, just 2 examples there directly from the principles in Agile that managers should be able to adopt, and use very effectively to keep their people motivated. It's not easy, but it's something managers have to do.
Okay, in means of leadership, we know that managers, they are leading many topics. And also, from team's perspective, every team member leads their profession. Like business analysts, they are leading the analysis of the products or the requirements, and developers, they are leading the development, and they are leading the build phase of the product. However, when we look at the whole picture, most of the responsibilities are gathered on the manager. So the teams start to feel that I work a lot, but the whole responsibility or whole power is still on the manager's side. So you mentioned that empowerment is very important, but from managers or from executives or from leaders' perspective, how can we empower the team? How can managers empower the team?
It's up to the team to be responsible for building what we need. It's up to the manager to make sure the team has the things that need to complete that task. Again, we're back to almost to a culture question, a question we discussed earlier, of managers tend to take control. And I take control, I tell you what you should do and where you should go, and just do what I said and we're good, right? Let me give an example, something I use a lot. I may have said this when I was in Istanbul last, but I always know an organization is in trouble, big trouble, when I see an executive in charge of BAs, an executive in charge of developers, and an executive in charge of testers. Because I now know that the BAs are motivated to write really good requirements documents and then hand it off to developers. And the developers are there to write code and then hand it off to the testers. And the testers are there to find bugs, right? That's what they're there for, is to test the code. Nobody is taking a holistic view of saying, okay, business, what is the business problem we're trying to solve? Taking one thread of that, the most important thread of that, and delivering that working code as fast as we can. Managers tend to be very segmented, as you said, either in charge of BAs or in charge of developers. And so they focus on making sure their people work as best they can, losing sight of the whole effective pipeline. The whole notion of a team, an agile team, is to get working software out of the other end of the pipe as fast as I can, and hopefully to get into production as fast as I can. Not write great requirements. I don't care. I don't care about it. Okay, I care a little bit about that. But it's really getting those requirements through that pipeline as fast as possible, because until the business sees the working software, they don't know if those requirements were right or not. The managers that I've seen that have made that transition from making sure their BAs are doing the right thing to making sure the team is delivering are the ones that are being very successful in this space. And guess what? They're motivating their team. They get it. They get this need of, what do you need? I will go and get that for you. I'll make sure you have it. I'll make sure you have the skills, the type of manager I was discussing earlier, making sure you're motivated, and then get out of your way so you can go and do your work. Those are the managers that are coming to the fore and being really successful. As you can tell, I'm kind of passionate about changing management's view. So.
Yeah, that's right. So I would like to jump to another point. What you said about mastery. So from time to time, I feel that from executives, they are just sitting on their chairs and they are giving orders, or they are tracking the status of the projects. And because they're signing contracts, and in order to give status to the upper level, they ask to the status to the teams, from the teams. But they have a different room. They're working there, and they don't have enough contact with the teams a lot. So we don't see mentors or leadership styles from management a lot. Do you think is it something we need to search from managers, or in order to be a good executives? We don't really need to have of mentors or mentoring styles of managers. What do you think about that one?
I think a good leader should be mentoring people all the time. Obviously, not everybody. If you're a CIO, you can't mentor your entire 400-person staff, but you can certainly mentor those 2 or 3 leaders that you recognize have some special ability, and give them the tools to increase that ability. I think that's what all executives, all managers, all developers, all testers, all BAs should be doing. They should be looking for that person who's got a bit of spark, and then help them learn a bit more, understand a bit more, develop faster. I think that's something that we should all be responsible for, not just managers. I went down a rabbit trail there. Yeah, so metrics are important, certainly at the executive level, but even now I find that most metrics are geared around cost, hours, time, right, dates. Very few executives or very few projects are measured on what am I really delivering, and is that value. So it's important for executives to understand metrics and understand what they're getting. So when I say a project is 80% done, I don't mean I've used 80% of my budget, or 80% of the time, or we're 80% of the way towards the date. It means I've delivered 80% of working software that I think we need. And so that change really changes an executive's outlook now, because we're looking at the entire project and using that metric of what have we delivered and how valuable, what's the value that we have delivered. There's an old metric from PMO days called earned value. In terms of Agile, we should be able to measure earned value very easily, because we have all of these user stories. So when I estimate, with my advanced clients, when I estimate user stories, I don't just estimate in terms of points, I also estimate in terms of value. So I have points, which is cost side, and value, and I can relate those two very well together, and then that drives the priority. Executives who get this start then driving their teams to deliver the value and understand what that means, and that's how they measure, right? And that leads to some interesting things happening. Now the team has some freedom, and when you give them freedom, their happiness or their happiness, yes, satisfaction goes up a bit. So now I'm again expressing myself as a leader, and I'm leading people, not telling you what projects to do. And that's what leaders are about. They're about leading people, making them more satisfied in their work and making them ultimately more effective in their work. That's what this is about. It's back to money again. Making sure I'm building the right thing and making sure I'm building it with high quality. That's what our leaders should be looking for. Did I really answer your question there, or did I get off on a tangent?
Yeah, that's fine. That
okay.
Yeah, that answers. So I have a few more interesting questions from my perspective. So besides agile culture and agile transformation, many people start to talk about a lean culture and lean transformation. What does lean culture and lean transformation mean from management or executive perspective?
I actually have a lot of background in the whole lean and Toyota production system. I used to be an automotive engineer. I used to design machine tools and production lines, and I've been to Toyota. I used to do a lot of work on the shop floor for General Motors too. Lean, I think, is very complementary to Agile, but I view it slightly differently, I think, to many of my colleagues, and I have a lot of debates around this. When they've seen this video, I'll have a lot more. I think taking Agile principles, Scrum principles, and applying them means that we're experimenting. We're trying things. We're not sure what the right answer is. We're not sure what the best approach is. We're not sure what the best team structure is. And Agile gives us the framework to change our mind frequently, to experiment, to make mistakes, and then fix those mistakes so we're learning what we really need to do. Once we've matured in that and we're used to delivering value and we're used to turning things very quickly, then I think we can start applying lean principles and saying, how do we get more effective at this? How do we learn even more? How do we do the right thing all of the time? How do we build quality in? So I think once we get the framework in place and we're used to delivering quickly and effectively, then we can introduce lean principles and say, how do I actually get better at this? How do I get better at moving things into production? How do I get better at automated testing? And applying lean principles to those individual pieces. So what I want to do is go away from, as I said earlier, BAs, developers, testers, to looking at the entire pipeline. I think that's an Agile move right there. But then I want to come back again and look at BAs, developers, testers, whoever, and say, how can I get these people to do their job even better, right, within the confines of delivering very quickly? So I think lean is an advanced piece of the Agile puzzle, and we can deliver some really good things using some lean techniques. But remember, even lean is about delivering the whole thing. Lean manufacturing is about popping cars out of the end of the Toyota production line as fast as I can with the highest quality I can. Gee, don't I want to deliver software as fast as I can with the highest quality I can? So I think we have a lot to learn from the lean movement, actually. I think we can incorporate these techniques very effectively.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot for the insights. So what I feel that so motivation, when we talked about motivation and the and the team's happiness and the delivering values and building software. So when we combine them, we conclude to gather a performance of individuals and performance of teams. Mm-hmm. So from executives and managers' perspective, they really like to calculate the performance of individuals and teams and products and what's going on the project. From that perspective, how can we calculate, or how can managers and executives calculate or gather information about the performance of people? We can call it as performance appraisals once a year that we do. 316 surveys and such. Do we need them, or is there any shortcut to get good feedback for the people and the team?
I think feedback is critical. I think a feedback-driven organization is an amazingly difficult and an amazingly wonderful place to work. I'm asking for feedback all the time. Every agile coach I know is asking for feedback all the time. Sometimes that can hurt, right? Within teams, though, I think motivating people outwardly, meaning the right skills, the right pay, is one step. But I think teams have to step up to this as well, and not just rely on managers to recognize when something's not going quite well, or a team member doesn't fit, or they're not pulling their weight. I think as effective teams, as mature teams, we have to step up to that too. When one of our teammates is not delivering as they should, when they're not taking responsibility, when their code is very low quality, it's up to us as a team to step up and help that individual. Or, I said I wasn't keen on firing people, or moving that person off the team. Sometimes it can be a personality problem. It can be any number of problems. But in terms of team effectiveness, I think we have to be very careful putting all of that responsibility on a manager and not being willing to step up as a team to solve that problem. I think it's our problem as much as it's management's problem. And so I'm always very careful around this especially when I'm starting new teams. If I find there's a problem, I like to deal with it very quickly, but privately, gently as well. I don't want to demotivate people, but the team should be able to step up and say, "Hey, Bill, you know what? You're just not pulling your weight. Now, is there something wrong? Don't you have the right skills?" And I think the team has to do that much more than managers have to do that. So I didn't really answer your question there, because I don't think that's a management issue. I think it's a team issue.
I see. Yeah, correct. So, I mean, we discussed a lot about the management styles and tips for how to be a good agile manager, or how to be good at how to be supportive at agile adoption and agile transformation. But we see lots of mistakes from management perspective because of a very low amount of experience. If you are good on your technical skills, after a few years, you become a manager in many companies, even though you don't have any management, or you don't have any skills to handle those responsibilities. Do you have any advices for the ones who become managers, and they don't have any experience about that? What are the hints that you can give?
Yeah, typically in our career growth, we go in at some entry level, we gain some experience, we become really good at something technical, and then there's nothing to do after that. So we become managers. That's our typical growth, which I think is an entirely wrong construct. I've seen two companies do this very, very well. One was EDS, and the other one is 3M here in Minnesota, where they have two tracks to your career. They have a management track, and they have a technical track. So you can become, at EDS, there comes this point in your life where you're leading projects, you're doing some good stuff, maybe you're a tech lead or something like that, and typically your next step would be to manage a team. But if I don't want to manage a team, why would you make me do that? You know, and so EDS had this track where you could move up in responsibility for a technology solution, so you'd work with bigger teams, or more complex projects, or different clients, or indeed lead client teams. And so you keep increasing your technical knowledge and your technical skill, because that's what you really love to do. And they had, what was the top designation was a fellow, a technical fellow, which was the equivalent of a vice president at EDS. And there were a number of people in this track who were technical their entire lives. And it worked really well, and they developed really, really technical people. But instead of managing people, their responsibility became growing people, mentoring people, as well as delivering technology, which worked for everybody. So I think this dual track is something that more companies should experiment with, should try, and should perfect. You know, if I'm a great Java developer and I love that, don't make me manage people, because I'm probably going to quit anyway, and I'm going to be terrible at it. So we all lose. So taking this different viewpoint, I say two companies I know who've done this very well. I think that's the best solution. But sadly, they are only two companies I know out of the hundreds of companies I've seen and been in and visited. So I think we have a long way to go on that one. I think we have a long way to go.
Yeah, right, right. So I would like to jump another topic. Imagine that you have you are a manager or you're an executive of a company, and you have few teams. However, after some time, your products become successful, and you grow and grow and grow. After some time, you might have 20, 40, 50, 60 teams. So you have to scale Agile, or you have to scale Scrum. You have to scale more and more in time. What are the advices from your perspective for the executives and managers who really love to scale Scrum and scale agility within the company?
Spotify have, I talked a bit about Spotify earlier, but they have a couple of videos out there that people can find on YouTube, and their approach is very much akin to the approach I like. So go and search for this, Spotify Engineering Practices, I think it is. But essentially, you're scaling teams. You're not making the teams themselves bigger, you're getting more of them. But as you get more teams in a product, that means you have to be able to make their responsibility in the overall product smaller and smaller, more specialized, if you will. And so if you have a team of 6 or 8 people, make them responsible for 1 or 2 things in the entire solution. And then make sure they're talking to the rest of the people. That collaboration is huge. This can become a problem when you do releases. The less frequent your releases, the more of a problem you're going to have. What you want is each team responsible for their specialist solution, developing that solution as fast as they can, and integrating with other team solutions as fast as they can, because that's where we find the problems. Typically, it's not with an individual team, it's integrating with the other teams, right? And so growing the number of teams, if your product can have all of these specializations, is the right thing to do. Not making teams bigger. Certainly don't get to the 50-person team I mentioned earlier, or 30-person team, because you're not scaling, you're just growing. You're getting fat. You're just not doing good things. And so that's probably the most important thing that I can think of is give each team their own responsibility, make them responsible for delivering on that thing frequently, every week, every 2 weeks, and integrating with everybody else's code as well at the same time. But watch the Spotify videos. They've got a very, very good approach to that. Certainly more than I can do in 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. We have few minutes left. Do you have any additional advices to executives and managers and leaders around the world in the companies and the companies?
I do. I think there are 2 things that executives need to learn how to do very effectively. A lot more than 2, but the top 2 for me is learn to experiment. Make mistakes and let people see you making those mistakes. But try things, try anything, and deliver on those things as fast as you can. Because that really gets people to see that you're doing something. You're not just sitting back and saying, I'm an executive, look at how great I am. I'm not saying that executives do that, but I've known a few. But experiment and try things and then deliver on those things. But the other thing that executives have to do, especially once you have agile teams out and about, typically in Agile, we develop quickly. So an executive should be looking for the teams, the roadblocks, the impediments from other teams who are not delivering quickly. It's really frustrating on an Agile team when you're delivering quickly, you're doing good stuff, and then you have to stop and wait for release management because they can only release every 3 months, or wait for security because they're putting new security patches in and they won't be ready for 3 weeks, right? So executives need to look at the entire organization, the holistic view of the organization, to find out where those bottlenecks are and then go and solve those problems. The problem isn't the Agile team is going too fast. The problem is that other teams are not able to go as fast and keep up with them. So those are the problems they should go and solve. That was executive wisdom in 2 minutes. That's good.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Atilla, yeah.
Yes, Paul, in Istanbul, you didn't have time to talk about the Schneider model. Could you talk about a little bit? Because every company has the way the things get done around here model.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you use the Schneider model?
I did. I use that quite a lot, actually.
Yeah.
If you think of the vertical axis, it's the old consultant's 4-quadrant model, right? Being a consultant, you've got to have that model in your toolkit. So if you think of the vertical axis see, I haven't talked about this in about 2 months now. You're making me think too hard. So the vertical axis is reality is at the top, and possibility is at the bottom. That is, how do I get information on what I should do next? Reality means I talk to my customers. I go to the marketplace. I understand what people really, really want. And banks do this a lot. They go out and they get feedback from their customers. They get feedback and typically ask surveys on what the customer wants next. At the bottom end of that line is what we call possibility. This is people like Apple, like Samsung, who invent new technologies. The example I use here is 10 years ago, I didn't have an iPad. Had no idea what an iPad was because they hadn't invented it yet, but they saw a potential there for a great product. So instead of asking, if they'd gone out to the marketplace and asked people, do you want an iPad? Nobody could have answered them, right? So they went around and said, no, we're going to make a pad that does some stuff. So I'm either out there in reality asking people what they want, or I'm insular inventing new things, which is a great place to be. The horizontal axis is creativity on one end and control on the other. That is almost anarchy, if you will, but small businesses, agile companies on one end, with a lot of collaboration, a lot of discussion, a lot of talking on one end, and on the other end is it's the military. It's take control, be very structured, very ordered, and follow the rules essentially. So that model tends to help me understand how organizations get their work done. If you're in reality and being creative, you tend to be on the upper left. That's typically a really good model for an agile implementation, because you already understand how to talk to people. You understand how to collaborate. You understand what teams are all about. If you're down at the other extreme, the bottom right-hand control, where I know the way to get work done, and I know what the work is that I need to get done because I'm inventing it, is not a good place for a collaborative team. That's a great place for the military, right? Frankly, I don't want my military to be collaborative, particularly, or creative. I want them to follow the rules. That's what it's all about. And then there are the other two quadrants too. But those are the two extremes of that quadrant. So I want to be as close to the upper quadrant as I can, and I use this when I go into a company to measure their collaborative ability, to measure their ability to be flexible, right? If I find teams are in the bottom right quadrant, or companies in the bottom right quadrant, I usually get with executives and say, do you really want to do this? Because it may not be good for you, right? Bill Schneider, he came out of the engineering background. I think his book is out of print now, sadly, but you can still find some used copies on Amazon. But it's a very simple model and one that I like to use quite a bit.
Okay, thank you. Also, I would like to ask you about, you mentioned the book. You are writing your second edition of your book, right?
I am. I am.
Yeah,
Yeah, my
yeah.
first book was thin. I wrote it initially for some executives at Bank of America to help them understand, to help them spread the word within the organization, and then I published it outside of that. Since then, since using it, I'm discovering a lot more concerns of executives, what they need to know, how they need to do it, and the book will at least double in size, maybe treble in size. It was 60 pages, so it's still going to be a fairly small volume. But just touching on all of these concerns, some of them I talked about today, like metrics, like empowerment, but updating the book so executives can really understand what they're getting into. It may not have all the answers, but I want to raise the awareness of some of the problems rather than people going in blind and hoping everything's going to work. If you're going to get in trouble, you should at least know the trouble you can get into before you get there. Hopefully, another 6 months on that project, but
Okay.
I'm not making any promises.
Okay, great. We are looking forward to read it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Attila, do you have any additional questions?
Yeah, I have a final question. Agile, it has been around many years, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
When you go to the new companies, the first day, the second day, do we talk the same things like 10 years ago, or do we start to talk something new?
I find, no, it's new. Almost everywhere now knows of Agile. Maybe they're using some Agile techniques, so it's not as foreign anymore. It's not as new to organizations anymore. At least people are aware of it. What I do find, though, is that there are a lot of companies out there who maybe they have a stand-up every day, maybe they do a showcase at the end of a sprint, or maybe they don't, and they think they're agile, right? Stand-up equals agile is a view of many companies, I find, without understanding all of the other disciplines that you have to make a successful agile team and project. Excuse me. So yeah, it has changed in that there's some awareness of agile. It hasn't changed in that there's still some terrible implementations of it out there. Because if everybody was doing it and it was easy, I'd be out of a job. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for this delicious talk and for all the answers, all the information you shared. Thank you very much for your time.
Again, I'm honored to be here. I'm really thrilled I was able to spend this time with you all.
We will be very happy to host you in Istanbul again. We are looking forward to seeing you again in Istanbul.
Okay, I will make sure we get there. That's a promise. I will be there sometime in the next year or two. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Hope to see you again. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.